Now that we've seen how to change our viewpoint in 3D, let's also look at how to manipulate objects using the transforms. Transforms in 3D are position, rotation, and scale. And you'll see 3 buttons up here on the main toolbar: select and move, select and rotate, and select and uniform scale. Currently, I've got my select object tool active. If I click on something, it'll be selected, but I won't be able to move it. The select object tool is great when you want to just select something but not actually transform it or position it. To change the position of an object, use select and move and activate that button, and that'll allow you to position the object. It also allows you to select. So that we can see this a little bit better, I'm going to orbit around to the other side, grab that orbit tool, and then just spin around, maybe position, and then go back to my move tool. And we can see that there is an axis tripod here. In 3ds Max, this is known as a gizmo. It's a manipulator that allows me to, for example, move an object. And in this case, we have 3 directions we can move in. We've got the X, Y, and Z axes. And by default, those correspond to the X, Y, and Z directions of the world or the grid. And you can see that here in the lower left corner of the perspective view, there's another axis tripod that indicates the orientation of the world. And by default, the move gizmo is oriented with the world. I can move in world Y, or world X, or world Z, which is the blue line, or blue arrow, and that's the elevation. We can make that gizmo larger or smaller using keyboard shortcuts. Press the equal sign on your keyboard to make that gizmo larger, and the minus sign on your keyboard to make it smaller. Additionally, there are 3 angle brackets here on the gizmo, and if I hover my mouse over this one, the XY angle bracket, and then click there, I can position the object in both X and Y simultaneously. I can move that around and keep it at the same elevation or height. We can see that in the front and left views that the plant is not moving up and down in the world. That's the move tool. Then we got the select and rotate tool. Activate that. And similarly, we get 3 color-coded circles instead of arrows here. And this allows us to rotate around one of the 3 axes of 3D space. X is red, Y is green, and Z is blue. If I rotate around Z, that's this circle here. It's currently active, so it's highlighted in yellow. I'm spinning around the Z axis. I can spin around the X or Y axis as well. I'll use Control Z to undo that. If you click in the center here, you're actually rotating in all 3 axes at once with a kind of trackball interface. That can be a bit confusing. I do recommend that you stick with just rotating in one axis at once. I'll undo that with Control Z. Then we come to scale. Scale is kind of tricky and kind of problematic. I would recommend that you try not to scale objects whenever possible. If you want to change the size of an object, then if it has a size parameter, use that. For example, this plant over here, in its modify panel, it has a height parameter. And I can adjust that height to make the plant larger or smaller. But the scale of the object, its actual transform, is staying at 100%. And I can see that because with the scale tool active and the object selected, down here in this area, the transform type in area, we can see that X, Y, and Z values are all 100. The object is at 100% scale. But I've changed its parametric size. You really don't want to scale things if you can help it because, for example, if this height over here says 20, and then I go and scale it by clicking in the center of that scale manipulator or gizmo, I can make the object larger in the world. I can bring that up to like 300% size. But now at this point, this height parameter is no longer accurate. It says a height of 20, and that's actually 20 inches currently. It says it's 20 inches tall, but I've scaled it up by a factor of 300%. So actually it's 60 inches tall in reality. That's only one of the problems that can come from scaling. As we'll see later in the course in our chapter on hierarchies, if you stretch objects by scaling non-uniformly in one or more axes, then you can incur some very problematic effects when you link objects together into a chain or hierarchy. If possible, don't scale the object. If you've got the ability to change its size with a parameter, use that. If you don't have that ability, then scale all the components or sub-objects at the same time and leave the transforms at their default of 100. Again, we'll talk about this later in the course. I'll go into depth about the problems that can happen with scale, how to avoid them, or how to fix them once they occur. Right now, I'm just going to restore this back to its 100% scale. I can go down to that transform type in and just type in a value of 100. And now it's actually 20 inches tall. All right, those are the transform tools: move, rotate, and scale in 3ds Max.